Let's get to our first discussion now. Following a motion moved by House of Representative member Nkema konam on the need to investigate the concession of airports in Nigeria, the House has resolved to suspend the concession of airports in the country, which was pursued by the immediate past government of President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, according to him, the most viable airports in Nigeria, Lagos, Abuja, and Kano, were commissioned to foreign firms through resolutions by the Federal Executive Council, deviating from due process, public accountability, and established laws of Nigeria. Also, investigations are still ongoing concerning the contamination of Jet A1 fuel in Nigeria, an act which puts the lives of many air travelers at risk. According to reports, a mixture of water and fuel was found in the fuel tanks of some of the aircraft. And in reaction to this, the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authorities announced a wide consultation with all relevant stakeholders to identify the problem and prevent future occurrence to improve safety. That is the crux of our discussion here. So joining us to discuss in the studio is an aviation analyst, Wole Shadare. It's nice to have you join us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
Good morning.
It's been a while now. Good morning. Well, the aviation industry, especially in Nigeria, of course, it's a global industry, but in Nigeria, you know, after COVID, there were projections that it was going to slow, the growth was going to be very slow. But however, the way it picked up, you know, seemed to be more than the expectation of even some experts who say, wow, we didn't expect this kind of.
Absolutely.
So, but now when we hear issues of contamination of Jet A1 fuel and issues of concession problems here and there, it takes Nigerians aback because their assumption is that we have run aviation perfectly for a while after getting all the certifications around the world, that some things should be a forgone issue. We're done and dusted issues. But let's start with the issue of concession. Why do we not get it right and agree on what concession should be in this country, to be or not to be?
I think concession is a very good thing in the aviation industry, because if you look at it, you look at the infrastructure deficit in the aviation industry, which is in the region of over 2 trillion naira. And government alone cannot even provide all the facilities in the airports. Because when we talk about airport, we're also talking about navigational facilities. We're also talking about so many things, not just the terminal alone. But what the government has done is to concentrate on the terminal and increase revenue base for the government. All over the world, concessions are allowed because government alone cannot even fund aviation. Except maybe in countries like United Arab Emirates, where they have a lot of money, and the Gulf countries where you have a lot of money they can throw into aviation. But in many other parts of the country, government are looking for partnership with the private sector to bring in money, run this thing efficiently because most times government in Nigeria does not even know how to do business, and that is why the government is trying to partner private sector to bring in money and run it efficiently and professionally, because we can't continue to run our airports like civil service organization. We need to bring the business sense. Then if you ask me, have we done the right thing in the way we have gone about concession? The answer is yes and no. The answer is yes, in the sense that government has identified what it needs to do. Are we doing it the right way? The answer is no. Are we engaging the right people to do it? The answer is also no. So if truly we want to concession this thing, we need to come out transparently and put all the cards on the table. We also need to look at workers, how it's going to affect workers. I totally agree that some workers are, I'm sorry to use that word, deadwoods in the airports area. And most of them will resist concession because they are scared of losing their jobs, and which is natural with human beings. They want to maintain their job. Even when they are not even relevant to the system, they still want to be there. But if you bring people who will run these airports very well, they are even going to ask maybe 50% of the workers to go, because by then you begin to bring technology, you begin to bring a lot of things to maximize what passengers will go through, what the good things passenger will go through, and even increase the revenue base of fund. We are losing a lot of revenue because we actually don't know what the airports are generating. And if you look at the airports in Nigeria, we have over 30 airports in Nigeria, and only 3 are viable, in quotes. When I say viable, you have 3 airports that are servicing over 28 airports. At the end of the day, you're losing a lot of money. Lagos is the highest revenue generating airport in Nigeria, followed by Abuja, followed by Port Harcourt, Owerri, and Kano in that order. So you begin to look at the revenue you have for Lagos, Abuja, Kano, and you fritter it away to other airports that are not viable, other airports that may not even be viable in the next 30, 40 years, and more airports are coming. So government has looked at it and said, okay, we can't continue to run this. Let us get the private sector people to do this. But like I said, we haven't engaged very well on how to do this. The last administration, they were on concession from 2016 to this very moment, until maybe a week or 2 weeks before the expiration of the government. Then you announced a concessionaire for the airports. They bring suspicion, and people will begin to ask you, how were these things done? But the former Minister of Aviation has defended his position robustly, that they follow the due process and they have all the legal backings to go through it. I just listened to your report now. The House of Rep or the National Assembly tried to probe the concession. It's good. It's within their powers to probe concession. But at the same time, I believe this is an executive matter. The National Assembly is just advisory. You can't do the function of the executive. You can advise. It's not about budget. It's not about money where you can do your approval or things like that. But at the same time, we also need to look at this exercise if they really follow
but the National Assembly has the right to carry out oversight functions.
No, they do. They do. What they have done, I haven't said they haven't done the right thing. They need to look at it wherever it has gone. We've had so many oversight. We have so many probe. At the end of the day, it's not going to yield anything. I think I'm sorry to say, they look as if they are grandstanding on some of these things. We had some of this thing Nigeria Air that they said they were going to probe and things like that. At the end of the day, you won't hear anything about some of this probe that they've done. The next administration comes in, it goes the same direction. The reports are not followed, nothing is done. Then we begin to go in cycles, nothing is done.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you begin to ask yourself, are we really serious as a people? Do we really know what we want? Do we really know what we need? Honestly, I think the answer is no.
We also understand that even the Lagos airport that you talked about yielding, so much income, so to speak, is the concession stage so far is also a subject of at least 2 suits, in the court, just to, show or to buttress your point, so to speak, about the controversies in the concession stage. But like you said, the former minister, Hadi Sirika, also spoke about how these concession bids were, robustly supervised by the ICRC. Yeah. But, from your understanding and from your, position of knowledge, help us to identify, what exactly is wrong, with our concession drive, having noted that it is a universal, procedure. It's normal for governments to toe this line, as against, raising money from within its limited funds.
Yes, like I said, we are not serious as a people, because if you look at even the biggest airports all over the world, like the JFK airports, like so many airports are across the world, most of them are concession. Even the Gatwick airport at the time was run by a Nigerian, I've forgotten his name now, a Nigerian, for so many years, and it was very, very successful. I think the inability to be transparent in some of these processes have, most of the time arm the unions with a lot of ammunition to say, no, we're not going to do that. Yes, they also have their own selfish reason why they will not allow concession to be. No matter how you paint it, no matter how good you make it look, they will still resist it. But somehow we have not been able to come out to say, okay, how were these bids done? We've not been able to see it. We've not been able to know how they arrive at some of these concessions. And that is why you begin to look at it and say, we've not really done what we're supposed to do.
Right.
And people will also ask you that, why the hurry in concessioning this thing? If we had a lot of time, we'll see how these airports are run. We'll see what they have done within a certain period of time, not when you're leaving office.
Right. Your point is noted, but then you also said it is something that you believe the executive arm should tackle. How should they tackle this? Should they cancel the contracts, awarded so far, and won't that also boomerang in terms of legal actions and all that?
I don't think they should even cancel the contracts. What we need to do is let's come together and see where the mistake must have been made. Let's see how we can correct it, how we can fine-tune it. If there are some aspects that are not where the government is not comfortable with, we can begin to, reshuffle it. We can begin to look at it and say, okay, this is the aspect. I do not believe in, cancellation, and we are fond of it. Each time we have a new government, we try to undo what the other government has done. Not everything they did were bad. We can take some of the things that they've done, then we can, look at it, fine-tune them and say, okay, this is what we're going. If we're not going to concession Lagos or Abuja airport, some have said, if you're concession, one of the anger of some of these protesters is that if you're concessioning Lagos, for example, you have to do it in pairs. You have to take Lagos, maybe Akure, or one of these to fund those airports and make them viable. You just don't pick the viable airports and throw the other ones away. They will die. FAN uses the revenue it makes from this airport to service the other airports. We can't close this airport. And if you also understand, most governors are building airports. After building this airport, whether they are viable or not, they will build airports and hand them over to FAN. Right. It becomes problem of FAN because it becomes national security matter. So you can't close the airport. Even if it's one flight that goes there in a day, when that flight is coming, they need to open that airport for that flight to come. And in case of emergency, you don't shut your airports. So we begin to look at it that how come we are not, concessioning these airports in pairs? What is even wrong in concessioning like Katsina airports? And make it work. You can put in money there, do some of the things you need to do there and make those airports viable. But if you take Lagos, Abuja, Kano airport, all the airports will suffer. Who is going to manage it? But some people have said, when you concession these 3 big airports, FAN can also manage the other ones. But where is FAN going to get the money to manage those airports? So we've looked at it and said, maybe that process was wrong. They should have done, and that's what the experts have clamored, that you have to concession these airports in pairs, not just take the viable ones and leave the ones that are not viable. All over the world, like I said, we have concession of 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And these airports are well run. Look at the case with MMA2, with Dr. Wale Babalakin's airport. How come we can't even bring Nigerians to say, okay, let us give Nigerians this project? Babalakin has run MMA2 very, very well. Whatever issues people have with it, it is one of the best, if not the best, airport terminal in Nigeria, and is a very functional terminal. So why can't we say, okay, let us bring Nigerians that have experience? I'm not saying we shouldn't look at foreign partners. We can do that as well, but we can also look at the local content and say, okay, you've done it before. Why don't you go and develop Akure? Why don't you go and develop Bauchi Airport and some of these airports? So I think we need to sit down to see how we can go about it. We can't continue to run our airports the way they are. Our airports they are just disgrace to Nigeria. You go to Murtala Mohammed International Airport, you weep. that airport has lost everything that will make it functional. What we need to do is to bring down that terminal and begin to build wonderful airport. Airports are not built the way Murtala Mohammed Airport is now. That airport was built over 40 years ago, and we are still using that airport. That airport was built when the traffic was about 200,000. But now, that airport processes over 2 million passengers annually. Or more than that, over 3-4 million.
Well, we've seen the Chinese company, has been, I think there's a terminal point that has been upgraded now, which looks amazing.
The terminal building we did, I think what we did was in 2013 by the former Minister of Aviation was very criminal, Mrs. Stella Udua. And,
criminal?
Yes, very criminal in the sense that we shouldn't have built that terminal where it was built. And if you look at that terminal, we built it as if we have no consideration of how things are done in other places. How can you build a terminal that cannot even take 2 wide-body aircraft? So they now have to start demolishing former accident investigation bureau office, and they are even talking about demolishing some hangars around there. The hangars owned by
the Dominion hangar, and all of that. Yeah.
And Dr. Demorin. How did we come to that? And that airport, we are still servicing the loan. At that terminal, we are still servicing the loan, $500 million. So how could you have built that type of, even the one that was built in Abuja, since that terminal was built, we can't even use the control tower. We have to use a mobile control tower to control flights. So if you have to use that control tower, you have to pull it down, and you have to rebuild another one in a very strategic place. And it will cost us more than 6 billion naira to build a very good control tower, because I don't know whether it was carpenters that built that terminal, because you would have seen the airport and known how that what you're building will block the control tower. And for some years now, we've not been using the control tower. The country has deployed mobile tower to navigate flight operation.
But didn't experts look at all of these? Qualified engineers who were supposed to ascertain and check all the boxes
and
before.
That is why I said maybe they ask carpenters to come and build the terminal by blocking an important facility like the control tower. So you begin to look at us that, are we truly doing what we're supposed to do as a people?
Really, something has to change about Nigerian airports, because it is more visible when you're traveling from, coming in from another country. Say you're coming from South Africa or from Rwanda or Kenya or even Ghana. The difference will just hit you hard.
Let me tell you, Nigerian airport was, the Murtala Mohammed Airport was like what we have in Johannesburg.
Otambo Airport?
Yes, OR Tambo Airport, shortly before the World Cup. Because I went to OR Tambo, Johannesburg, and it was just like, in fact, Murtala Mohammed Airport was better than what they had then. So, but shortly before the World Cup, they built a massive infrastructure that is one of the best in the world in terminal. If you go to that terminal, you will love the terminal. You even want to sleep there because it's so wonderful, it's passenger friendly. But just compare it with what we have in Nigeria. Honestly, immediately you arrive from your trip through that airport, you just feel sad. The reality of Nigeria hits you.
It hits you really hard. From the stench to the heat.
Exactly.
To even like, why? Even AC systems, air conditioning cannot work in this.
I say that terminal has to be brought down, and let us begin to build another. Go to Ghana. Ghana has fantastic airport terminal that was commissioned a few years ago. Go to Senegal. They have one of the best airports in Africa. Go to Lomé. They've rebuilt their airport. They rebuilt their terminal, and it's fantastic.
How do they do it? That is so difficult for us, the giant of Africa,
They
too.
even got money. They got loan, but they use that loan to do something fantastic that people will really see it and say, yes, it's worth even borrowing money to do this.
All right, we don't have all the time, but we need to talk about this Jet A1 fuel contamination that's raising controversy around the country. It's a thing of concern and safety, especially safety concerns to a lot of passengers. I wonder how, you know, how is it even difficult to trace where that came from when you knew who fueled the aircraft, you knew where it was bought from, you know, and so on.
You know what happened? I think last week we woke up to the news that NCA grounded MAX aircraft. And when we saw the video, I was really shocked because what came out from the tank of that aircraft, the Boeing 737 aircraft, was more than 200 liters of water. How did it happen? Where is the quality control of the airline? Let's agree that the problem came from the marketer. As an airline and as a captain or pilot, won't you see what is being sold to you? Won't you just, okay, let me even see whether they are selling the money's worth of what I wanted to buy, whether they are, or you didn't check and assume that everything was okay. And it was even God that saved this country. Would have had an accident, yes, because that aircraft was meant to go to Maiduguri. But on his way, the parameters in the aircraft failed. All the instrument, or most of the instrument failed. So they did an emergency landing in Yola. So when they tried to restart the aircraft, they found out that it wasn't responding.
But that malfunctioning, was it tied to the adulteration? Yes,
absolutely. Absolutely, because you can't have that quantity of water in the tank of an aircraft mixed with fuel, or maybe 100% water, and not have the engines flame out. So when they now got to Yola, they said, let's see what has happened to this aircraft. They checked everything, and they found out that it wasn't working. So they checked around, they checked I have the video, yeah. So they checked and they saw water coming out of the tank, the two tanks. So NCA needed to move in quickly. So if that aircraft has done another 5 minutes on his way,
it would have been a disaster.
It would have been a disaster. So we were just happy, excited that we didn't have another crash on our hands. It would have been very, very difficult to manage, in the sense that the country will be going through certification or recertification by International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, next month. And that would have put a lot of dent on our image as a people and as an industry.
But even the way we are managing this crisis, you know,
we don't know. The NCA
isn't it going to even have an impact on our recertification?
I think the DGNCA spoke on that yesterday, that is not going to affect. I don't know. That's his own view. But I will agree with him, because he's the regulator. He must have seen or known what they require or request for us to pass that test.
But like Mike said, but like Mike said, it appears to be a blame game. The NCA has spoken, the midstream, the downstream and upstream have also spoken that they don't have control, they say, over the fuel that leaves the depots. And then we've also seen the Accident Bureau, Investigative Bureau saying they had warned years ago when a similar case like this happened, you know, calling for, robust investigation and beefing of these leakages, because there appears to be a gap somewhere that is, fueling this kind of disgrace.
I agree with you totally, because the NSB, the Accident Investigation Bureau, which is now the Nigeria Safety Investigation Bureau, has been on top of this. Even the regulatory body has been on top of this. They had a meeting yesterday with all the airlines and even the marketers and their regulatory body to sit down to really trace what happened. Could it be that where the fuel was stored, it's possible water found its way to the tank? And if water found its way to the tank, I think it's also the responsibility of the marketer to know that what is selling to airline is contaminated, and you quickly raise the alarm. The airline also has responsibility to check what is being sold to it. Nothing of that was done. And I want to believe that, just like the NCA said, they will get to the root of this, to the bottom of it, because it has its own consequences. Anything could have happened. And we actually don't know the quantity of fuel that has also been sold to other airlines.
Elsewhere, right.
So we need to also look at this, but you can't take a decision in a hurry. You need to investigate. But one thing that I found so not so pleasing is that we keep on doing the same thing. Maybe in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, the same thing will happen. But fuel contamination is not limited to Nigeria. It happens all over the world. But how are we responding to it? How are we making sure that we do not have this type of issues again? We've had so many accidents caused by contaminated fuel, even in Europe, in the United States. So things can actually go wrong.
We've not forgotten last year when some, bad fuel was imported from. Was it Belgium? And
exactly.
so it knocked the vehicles of a lot of people.
Can really go on.
And we expected heads to roll, but it seems...
for the PMS, you can even allow that, in the sense that if you have problem with your car, you park it. But there's no parking space.
Parking space up there.
So
and all these cases, it's good that you say this is not limited to Nigeria alone, but in looking at the causes or the motives, assuming that this is not a human error, as in what else could have been the reason for this here in Nigeria and other climes?
Yeah, it could be mistake, it could be error, but marketers have what they call Bowser. You used to test the quality of the fuel being sold to you. But just like the marketer said, the marketer said, it's possible what they got was actually good, but where it was stored could have been, they have, most of them have a common storage tank where they store their fuel and go and truck it from that place to the airport. So it could have also been maybe from the tank. Maybe the tank was open, the tanker was open, and water got into the tank. So anything could have happened. And that is the reason the NCA is investigating. Also, the NSIB is also investigating to really know where this contamination came from. We've had fuel contamination in the industry. I think this should be the third or fourth time.
Are we expecting heads to roll?
Heads must surely roll if it is found that the marketer, because NCA is talking tough now, that it will go all out to penalize the marketer and even withdraw the license of any marketer found culpable in all of this. So we expect heads to roll.
All right. We have to leave it here now. There's so much to talk about, but let's leave it here, and then maybe as things unfold, we'll still talk about it. Wole Shadare, thank you so much, aviation analyst, for your insight into all of these issues.
Thank you for
having me. Thank you very much. Thank you.